We did it. It says you are live.
We are.
Ready or not, we're back.
We can poke. Are you alive?
Hello? Is this thing on?
Is this thing on? Is it on?
Not.
Oh, it is on. Look at that.
I'm sure that it is. All right. Well, hello and welcome to our Go Live. We were doing this quite regularly, and then we were abducted by aliens, and we have not been on planet Earth for a while. And so now that we are back, we thought we would share some of our findings. Oh, no, maybe not. Maybe we've just both been really busy and really tired, and we're both living in heat waves. And so what I'm learning is heat waves are very tiring, and you don't really feel like doing a lot of things. So today we said, gosh darn it, why don't we go on live and see if anyone will show up and listen to us chat?
If anyone will show up, I'm going to go on mine and see if anybody... I have a button on my screen for those who are not familiar with StreamYard that says join the chat.
Ooh.
And I don't know that I should click it because the last time I clicked something, it took me away.
I think you should click it. Who thinks that you should click it? Click it. Click it.
Connect. Yeah, let's see. Continue. Please keep me on this. Allow. Okay, it looks like it worked.
I think it would be interesting. Yeah, because remember before it would always, I think, just say my name no matter who wrote the comment. So that just makes sense.
Well, you wrote this as a comment. I mean, this is quality information for anyone.
That's actually quite synchronistic that we both wrote this as a comment. That's pretty funny. Hi, Anna. Oh, see, we can always count on your mom.
I think she's here to see you.
Well, probably. Let's admit that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get to it. It's over 2 minutes. We have 2 people apparently viewing. And so we do have a topic today. Does that feel good to jump right into?
Sure.
Okay.
Aside from our adventures with space, apparently.
Well, I was going to go a different direction. So lately, I think both Danay and I have been very aware of being kind of on the cusp, on the leading edge of something new. And I think it's really valuable for us to talk about that and find out what other people are thinking. And, you know, when you are on the cusp, you're not there yet. And sometimes we feel like we're really far away because we don't know when it's going to happen. Whatever that thing is that we think we're waiting for, or the shift or the change or the big break or whatever it is, it starts to feel like it's really far away because we just don't know. But the thing about that is when we have this attitude that it's far away, we act like it's far away. Mm-hmm. And we put a lot of time and energy into it being not here yet. And that doesn't serve us. And it's funny because we're, you know, when you're in those moments of not knowing and your focus is on it's not here yet, that's where your thoughts and behaviors tend to go. If it's not here, I don't have it, I don't know when it's going to happen. And then it starts to sometimes really spiral into doubt. Is it ever going to happen? You know, am I worthy of it happening? And we just go wah, all the way down that rabbit hole. And it's funny because just as I was talking, I had the analogy pop back into my head. And I think we used this on one of our very first lives when I talked about ordering the pizza.
Oh, yes. The pizza.
And I mean, let's admit that was a great analogy because when you order pizza, you start getting ready for the pizza. You queue up the plates or the napkins or the soda or the movie or whatever it is. You get your comfy clothes on and you get in full receiving mode of that pizza showing up in the time frame that you're expecting it, because you know, let's say it's supposed to be in 20 minutes or whatever it might be. And you do everything within your thoughts and your actions to be ready for the pizza, because there's the assumption that it is coming, it's on its way, and you're forward reaching into the moment of when you have it, and you are getting everything queued up and ready for that. There is very little energy spent on, I wonder if they're making it. I wonder if they got my order. I wonder if it is going to show up. I wonder if the driver's going to get lost. I wonder if they'll put the wrong toppings on. I mean, we could choose to go there, and maybe sometimes we do. But usually, once we get that pizza place that we know is good, we just trust it. We move right through trust into knowing we know that it's coming. We're surprised if it doesn't come because we have created an environment where we have full expectation of it. And so I think that that's interesting. If we take that same analogy then and move it towards the better job that we want, the better partner that we want, the better feelings that we want, the better home to live in, whatever it is, waiting for a house to sell, whatever those kind of pivotal moments are, we know that we're on the brink of it. We know we want it, but we're not in the preparation of it. We're in kind of a limbo that sometimes dips into the camp of maybe it's never going to happen. So we hang out in no or maybe. We're very rarely in yes, hell yes. So go ahead.
I feel like in this conversation, we're going to have to specify no as in N-O versus K-N-O-W.
True.
Because there's going to be a lot of no versus no. So I think you brought up an important point of trust in it. But it also brings up a need to control things.
True.
We have, for our safety, our security, we feel much more confident when we have control over things. And the things that happen outside of us externally, we do not have any control over. We have control of how we react to things. And as much as some of us would want to have control over things outside of us, I think that would be too overwhelming. But playing with the idea of, the pizza delivery or ordering something online to come, there are people who doubt the delivery of things. Not so much with pizza. I'm usually pretty good with that. But there are certain circumstances where you don't feel in control. If I lived in a house, for instance, and I ordered something, I think I would be more comfortable with the idea or trust that it would be coming. But because I don't live in a house, there's so many more opportunities for things to shift and change. So I think depending on how probable someone thinks that whatever it is that they desire is likely to happen, that new job, if they're like 90% confident about it happening, they're going to engage in behaviors that are going to create more of a likelihood of it happening. They're going to have a confidence around them. And even if we speak outside of energy, they're going to hold themselves in a way that it's likely to increase the opportunity of that coming. But energetically, you've just put yourself in this space or this frequency that you expect it to come. But if you're 10% confident that something is coming, you're probably thinking about all the ways that it won't work out, all the ways, all the obstacles or all the things that can interfere with it coming to fruition for you to have whatever it is that you desire. I think there are so many factors that come into play on whether or not somebody can trust or KNOW know that something is on its way or is there, and you just have to open up your eyes and go, here I am, I'm ready for this opportunity, or I'm ready for this experience. There's a lot of things that can impact our openness to experiences, and a lot of it has to do with our past experiences. And I think another aspect is how connected we feel to the possibility of it happening. One of the things that comes to mind is retirement. There's research that's shown if you feel distanced from that future self, you're less likely to save for that future self. But if you feel a connection to that future version of yourself, and you're more likely to put money away because you actually have that connection. if you feel connected to what it is you want, I think you increase the likelihood of having it. But the doubts, the insecurities, I think those create a disconnect between things. So I don't know what thoughts you have about that.
Well, I like your point about the connection with the future self, although saving for retirement, I think, is a whole other topic. I think the more that we can create a connection with what we want, I do think that that helps to make it feel more real, more tangible when you allow yourself to imagine the having of it. It does bring it much more into your current reality, and as opposed to just being a pipe dream or something that you wish for. A lot of people who are very goal oriented, they'll say, well, if you don't write it down, it's just a dream or a wish. It's the writing of it and the claiming of it that makes it more of a goal and putting a time frame around it. I don't know that I agree with that as much, but I think the idea is right because it does put more form to it.
Well, it's clarity, right? It's the clarity that you have around it. Because for instance, if anybody comes to us for securing like a better job or being open to another avenue of income, we rarely focus on the actual form of the job itself. Like if they're like, well, I want to be, I don't know, I want to work at this specific company for this specific position. And we don't focus on that. They may have clarity around that, but we also don't focus on that. We get them to think about, well, what are the qualities of the job? What are the things that you would like about it rather than the actual position? Because then you open yourself up to anything that would meet those qualities, right? And I know on my end that sometimes I do have a trouble with focusing outside of the form of something itself, rather than what sort of qualities or characteristics I would like in that experience. Because we get attached, right? We get attached. If somebody's been dreaming about having like their dream job and they're having trouble securing it, what is it about the dream job that's appealing to them? Mm-hmm. What is it that they want from there? And a lot of us may feel like we are on the cusp of something, but if we don't have that clarity of what it is that we desire, that's not specific to its form, like its tangible aspects, I think that creates some muddy waters for us to then try to navigate and say, like, how is it here if I really don't know what it is that I actually want? When you don't know what's around the corner for you. You don't know what's going to lead to the next thing, that maybe there's an experience that's going to give you more clarity on what it is that you want in that next job or that next experience. But I think there's something, there's around the clarity aspect of things, but it isn't necessarily about the form. It's about characteristics or aspects of it that are desired.
Well, I think what I was talking about was more so, let me tune in for a minute. And it's about creating a connection with it. So I think that every experience that we have offers some clarity in that it offers us a preference. I prefer this or I do not prefer that. So that does help just fine tune what it is that we're thinking about. But if I'm imagining going out for a really good meal, I can imagine walking into a nice dining room and picturing a table layout that feels good for me and comfortable chairs and the color of the linens. And I can picture the weight of really nice silverware. And I can picture what it would feel like to hold a menu and peruse choices and imagine foods that I might pick and imagine that it might have a certain presentation that feels a little more artful than normal, and how good that bite might be. And I could go and create a really elaborately detailed sensory imaginary experience for myself. But that doesn't mean that I've now blocked myself by making myself it too limited to, I have to go to this particular restaurant and have this particular food. So I think it's creating that connection for yourself as much as you can will allow you to identify with how satisfying it can be to go to a fine dining restaurant or to try a new restaurant. But it's not limiting you in terms of what restaurant or when or where in the world it might be. And so I think we're getting a little far away from where we started, but the idea of the fact that whatever we are desiring, whether it's a fun night out at a restaurant or a life-changing event, the details of it do not have to be important unless imagining the details allows us to feel more of a connection that brings us a bit more towards that assumption of course it can happen.
Yeah, so that'll bring up a difference between connection and attachment. Because you can feel connected to something, but not attached to
Yes.
it. You could also feel attached to it. So picturing a restaurant, maybe there's a restaurant that's really meaningful for you, and then you're like, it's got to be that restaurant. So you wouldn't be happy if, the plans shifted and it was a different restaurant. But if you're unattached to the concept of it, then I think you open yourself up to anything beyond the restaurant, and it's more the energy of the experience itself. And if imagining the specific aspects of it, then I think you're getting yourself in a place that is open to this experience. But if you're sitting there going, it has to be this because this is what I'm comfortable with, then that creates different energy, right?
Yes. Yes. And of course, when people are in a session with us, we do recommend them to be as detached as possible to a very specific outcome. And because they have the most opportunity to experience what they want if they allow for more choices to kind of fit the bill, to check the mark of, that is the essence of the experience I was looking at, even though it wasn't Gordon Ramsay's #1 restaurant in Las Vegas. I actually ate at this other place, and it was also so satisfying and so memorable, and it made even a better story because of how they messed up our reservations at the other place. And to be open and allowing for more to come in really does create more success. But again, I just want to draw it back to the idea of when it feels so far away, that's the time for us to reach into this connection with whatever it is that we're looking for. And if it is, say, the new job, imagining what aspects of a new job would feel really good and juicy. And to your point, it doesn't necessarily have to be a particular workplace or even work hours or even a location that the job is, but to be really in the essence of what does it feel like to wake up on a morning that you're going to this job? And what does it feel like to be with the coworkers there? And what does it feel like to do the job, the work that's offered there, and to be in the satisfaction of it, and to be in the mutual respect of everyone there, and maybe the fun that you have after work because everybody likes to socialize together. Like, you can create quite a connection with the essence of it, as opposed to spending your time thinking it's never going to happen. I'm probably never going to get hired. I'm not qualified for anything else. I want it, but no one's calling me. Like, because those thoughts really keep you in that place of not having.
Well, that's your closest match to it, but they also keep you in a place that feels really crappy. So
that too.
But thinking about maybe there's, and I don't really have an answer for this, but are there subtle indicators to say that you're actually on the cusp of something? Because like what comes up, you know, in some discussions when people are going through a challenging time, you know, people will say it's darkest before the dawn, which is frustrating. Or, you know, you got to hit rock bottom before you go up. But the idea is how many rock bottoms or how many darkest before the dawns are there before you actually are like, I'm on the cusp. I'm on the cusp. It, you know, a lot of the times, or I'll be careful with that. There may be times, there may be some times when we are anticipating the arrival of something, but it feels lengthy. And I don't know this firsthand, so you'll have to comment on it. It's like prolonged labor, where you know something is coming, but you just don't know when.
Well, so I can clarify a little bit. Pregnancy is the better example there.
All right.
Because you're excited when you find out, and then it feels like it's kind of going a long time, and then they tell you, well, it could be any time in the next 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. And that's hard to plan for, because by then you have a beach ball, you're not sleeping well, you're probably not eating well. Like, life is different. You're 8 months in at that point, and it feels like it's been forever. And there is this aspect of, could be any day, but it probably won't be. But it could be, but it probably won't be. But it could be. And then as you get to the due date, and if you pass that, then you start to go into all kinds of stories about, all right, but now what? And what's the plan B? And how long am I going to go over? Because they'll often let women go 2 weeks past their due date if that's where the baby is healthy and happy. So I think it's a great analogy for a lot of what people are waiting for, because they think they've got everything in place. And to go back to your point before, of they have no control over it.
Mm-hmm. It's frustrating, but how do you know, like within a pregnancy, you know, a ballpark, right? You know, within a month period, that it's going to happen sometime in there. But when you're on the cusp of something and it's energetic or life, like, you don't know. like you may have a sense of something, or like an intuition that's, you know, something's coming, but, you know, by the, you know, 7th day of you saying something's coming, you know, or the 14th day, and you're like, something's coming, it's not there. And then it creates this energy around defeat, because it's, you feel like, well, it brings up a bunch of things. Like, is this feeling that something's coming wish fulfillment? Or is it, you know, a sense that something is coming? Yeah.
Is it a sense? Well, I think the thing about that is, do you want to stay in the not having it of it or not?
Sure, you can say that so easily, but if you're at your wit's end about something and you're
Not
like,
being there.
Sure, not being there, or you could have spent a bunch of time. And I'm trying to think of experiences where people have talked about, you know, anything can happen at any moment, right? You really don't know what's around the corner for you. Even as soon as we finish this conversation, we have no idea. You know, we could have something fantastic happen right after this conversation. We could have something really awful happen after this conversation. We can have something in between happen. We just don't know. But if you're in the mindset that you know something is coming, but then you're not seeing the birth of it, or you're not seeing it come into your physical reality, then it has a tendency to create that sense of, when is it going to happen? Like, how do you know it's going to happen? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
So do you have comments around this?
Well, I assumed you had an answer.
I don't have an answer. I mean, we could talk about tools on how to hold on to, you know, not necessarily hope, but just to trust that things can happen, being open to the possibility that things can happen. So
I think it's kind of like having a piece of paper and drawing a line and understanding when you draw the line. If you draw it and there's, say, 10% of the white space on one side and 90% on the other side, that's what it feels like you're describing. That you're going to spend most of your time in that 90% section, wondering, worrying, doubting, trying tools to stay in a trust kind of aspect. You know, how am I supposed to trust it? How am I supposed to believe it? And so that's where you're spending all of your time. But that 10% side is the having it. And
Sure.
so I think the only tools or information that's valuable is what can let you spend time in that 10% side of the having of it. What can you do to be in the knowing of it? To be in the knowing that I have it now.
Well, that's a great question. What can you do? And a lot of people will have some disagreements on the idea that if it's not present right now, how do you pretend you have it? Right? How do you be in the energy of having it?
Mm-hmm.
But the object itself, and when we know this, the object or the occurrence or the experience itself doesn't matter. It's the energy that it brings you. You know, you meet a new friend and you form a connection. You could meet any new friend and have that connection, and it's going to bring out joy and curiosity and excitement on meeting a new friend or starting something new or eating at a new restaurant. There's going to be a lot of commonality of what's experienced. So I would essentially encourage somebody who's feeling this defeat to think about ways or experiences that they have access to that they can be in that energy of having what it is that they desire.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's about as practical as we can get kind of law of attraction coaching to be. And so I think it's interesting because there are certain camps there. There are the people that are just in the confusion of how am I supposed to get the stuff because it really doesn't feel good that I don't have it. There's the middle camp of where we guide people of, well, let's lean into the sense of it and let's imagine the having of it so that we can become more familiar with it and shift our thoughts away from the not having of it. But then there's also the other camp, which is to be in the having of it, to just know that you have it. I understand that it's not very practical, but it's interesting how the vibration of everything that we're talking about feels so covered, like spray painted in the not having. So everything that we're talking about is becoming actually more like a 99% of that page of not having it. Because everything is focused on the wanting it, the not having it, the doubting it, the wishing I had it, the pretending that I have it. But it's still strongly feet in cement of I don't have it. So where I would play, and I understand it's not that practical, and we don't know who's ever going to listen to this who's like, what is she talking about? This sounds ridiculous. But what I would do is I would play in allowing the feet to come out of the cement and go up in the hot air balloon and just be in the having of it.
Well,
and just
let's
play
do an
there.
example. Let's do an example of something that somebody could feel on the cusp of, that whether or not they're in a sense of discouraged feelings or excited feelings or whatever it is, what's something that is typical, I guess, that somebody could experience?
Well, I mean, a lot of our people that we talk to all have businesses, for instance, and they're waiting for kind of the next big month or the next big client or people to sign up for their workshop or whatever it might be, right? That's something that we often are having conversations about between the two of us and other people. And so to be in the space of it's done, it is done. And to be in the energy of whatever it is.
Can you be in the energy of it if you don't believe it?
If you don't believe it, then I suspect no. But is it that you don't believe it's possible, or you just don't believe it's the fact at the hand right now? Like, if you're insisting of, well, I'm going to look and see how many registrations I have for the course, and if there's none there, then I'm just proving that I don't have any. But what does feel better? Does it feel better to know that the course can be filled? The course is filled. Like, to play with those realities of how does it feel when the course is filled? How does it feel to be on, say, a Zoom call with 30 squares showing with everyone's bright, shiny faces? Like, to play in that energy of that, and to know that until you turn on the Zoom call, you really don't know anything different. It's really a matter of surrender, of the needing to know ahead of time, the needing to make it happen. It's the surrender of it needing to be any particular outcome at all. And I mean, you brought up this story, but I think it's a fun example of, I was offering a course at one point at the beginning of the year and no one was registered. So I went through all the emotions of, okay, I did it wrong, or no one's interested, or maybe I'll postpone it, blah, blah, blah. And I received the perspective of, well, you don't know. Are you in the course right now? No. When does it start? Monday at 9 a.m. Well, unless it's Monday at 9 a.m., you don't know. And I was going to bed Sunday night and there was still kind of nobody registered. And at 10:30, someone registered and then someone else registered, until I had a Monday morning at 9 a.m. I had to show up and actually have a course ready. And it was a really great course. So how much fun is it to know that you just don't know? And so why play in the realm of, I wish I knew and I wish people were doing it, as opposed to, it's kind of nice that I don't have to know. It's kind of nice to give myself the opportunity to imagine what it's going to be like when I do sign on and every square is filled.
So I think it's important to acknowledge this in a sense of, we're under the habit from as long as I can recall in my life to, for me specifically, but for just the world, for those who are pretty much living in a place that has the news or has any of those outlets or media aspects of it, we're trained in some capacity to assume the worst, to anticipate that the worst can happen. And why it's important that we have this conversation, because anybody listening can look at this and say, hey, I'm just poking at you while you're sharing your thoughts about things. And I'm like, no, I'm asking things that I know that people are going to ask. And it's because of that mindset, from a protective standpoint, from a secure standpoint, to be in a place where you think, hey, I need to protect myself. I need to predict what could go wrong so that I'm prepared. But what we want to bring out in people is to not jump to that habit. If you feel you need to prepare in some particular way, then great, do it, but then let it go and be in the experience of allowing yourself to see that good stuff happens all the time. We just anticipate the bad stuff because that's what we're trained to do. You know, innately, evolutionarily, whatever it is, we're trained to anticipate the worst so that we survive. But what we want to allow people to experience is, sure, it's good to anticipate how things could go wrong, but don't be consistently in that energy and anticipate that things actually can go right just as much as a probability of them going wrong. We just don't know. It feels a lot better to be in the energy to say like, hey, this could work out. You know, because if we go into something assuming it's not going to work, we're going to behave in ways that it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So it's important for people to see that. So my comments for you earlier were to get at those questions of people saying, how do you be in the having of it? Or how do you just accept without being attached that something's around the corner for you? Because every day something is around the corner for you. Every day there is the potential for something to happen. We have no idea. You walk out of your front door one day and your life could change forever. You absolutely have no idea. I'm just as happy as if I pick up a dime on the street going, hey, I found some money. You know, we don't know when things are going to pop up in our reality, but we're always looking for the ways that they're going to go wrong. And I think it's important for people to realize that we're all on the cusp of something, but we're all focused on seeing how things could go wrong. If we can just open up to seeing how things could go right, I think it's going to change how we live our lives. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I think it's brilliant. And that's really exactly where we started, is when we are in that not knowing, all of our actions and focus is on the not knowing, the not having. When we can allow ourselves to shift into the having of it, and exactly what you said. I mean, sometimes an exercise that I'll run people through is, what would that version of you who has that already, what would she be doing right now? What would she be having for lunch? What would she be wearing? What's her day look like? She does have that end result. And so you get to tap into what would be shifting for you when it is here. And so that you really can, again, be in the having of it. And so someone who, has the money that they want, they're not clipping coupons and trying to look for ways to save a penny or two, because they are in a feeling of abundance. And it doesn't mean that if you don't have the money, you should just go out and rack up a whole bunch of debt. But it does mean that your attitude could be, I am abundant. I do have everything that I need and more. I can have, what I need. And we will play different games with people, abundance games, or to play a maximum type of game where you pick one category that you allow yourself to always have what you want. And whether it's buying cereal or filling up your gas tank, because it's so powerful to tune in to the version of you that doesn't care what the number is. You want it, and so you allow yourself to have it. And so there are different techniques. So when I say be in the having of it, obviously that does sound too abstract, but there are ways to cross over and be in that energy, as well as the actions and the mindset of the having of it.
Yeah, for these experiences, it's important to be in that mindset And I keep going back to thinking for those who have that challenge of being in that mindset because they don't see what's clearly in front of them. We are way, like, if you live in North America, you're way more abundant than you realize with a lot of things. And I know there are certain exceptions to that statement, but the idea is seeing what you already have is an important aspect to this, because when you want something, you're under the impression that you don't have it already.
Exactly.
And that's creating a disconnect to begin with, because people think desires are great, and they are, because they bring forth what it is that you want to move towards. And then paying attention, well, how do I already have that in my life? And how can I create more of that energy or experience in my life with what I already have? And a lot of people are focused on money. And we are way more abundant, especially with money, than we realize we are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's catching those, it's noticing those things that already exist.
Right. So
we don't do that. It's the same when you are working on yourself in some capacity, that you're looking, you and I are both on the journey of self growth and transformation and all those things, because the work we do, we are embodying that aspect of it. But a lot of us have a tendency to look at the ways that we've failed rather than the ways that we've already succeeded, because it's not a big deal being, succeeding at particular things, unless they're larger milestones. They don't seem as important because they don't create threat or alarm or, something that you need to be attentive to. So a lot of us don't celebrate any sort of shifts that we make in our day-to-day life that then can encourage us to see any sort of indicators that something good is on the way, that something good is possible. So
it's true. So what would be your kind of final thoughts about how can people feel better before they see the evidence of the change?
I think it's looking at the things in your life that you have that are working well, because then that puts you in the mindset that things aren't as bad as they may seem.
Mm-hmm. That you have it better than you realize.
That you have it better than you realize. And I mean, again, we're trained to look for all the ways that we need to fix things or improve things or anticipate things, because we're under the assumption that bad things always happen. So they don't, but we're not attentive. It's like, take a channel that has news all day long, and if it was broadcasting the typical news broadcast that we'd see, there would be people watching it. But if it's news that's on, like, here's this good thing that happened and here's that good thing that happened, and I think this is increasing where more people are fascinated by it, but it doesn't create that level of excitement, that level of drama that people somehow have an attraction to that may not make sense. So it's interesting to see that when you think something bad could happen, then allow yourself to see that something good could also happen. So there's no harm in understanding the probability of all sorts of outcomes, but we're always leaning towards how something could go wrong.
Yeah.
And it's retraining ourselves to understand that there's equal probability of something going wrong as there is going right. And you don't know. It's a flip of a coin, right? Like, I could walk somewhere and I could trip. I could walk somewhere and I could not trip. Which one of those two seem more exciting? The tripping. There's a change in it. And people would probably prefer watching me trip than just walking along. But we don't acknowledge the fact that out of those two experiences, 50% I quote unquote failed and 50% I was successful. But we don't acknowledge the success of walking from one place to another without falling over. Mind you, if we weren't capable of doing that, then that would be a huge success.
Well, and isn't that fun to point out about how important perspective is? Because if you've had a medical issue and you couldn't walk and you went to physiotherapy and rehabilitation for 6 months and now you're walking, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And yet in our normal day, we don't even notice. It is a big deal, but we tend not to notice.
We don't notice because we don't give it value. That's the thing. We don't give a lot of these smaller sort of successes values. Walking is amazing that we can walk.
The mechanics of it are just like blows my mind what's involved in walking.
And I know based on my own mobility stuff, like when I can walk and not feel certain things, I'm like, hurrah. But it's the idea that we're not giving credit or value to things that are actually big deals. Because without those things, we've become in some ways, well, many of us have taken for granted a lot of the things that seem that we're entitled to. Like, they shut off my power today. And that's, typically not a big deal if it's like, an hour or whatever, a half hour. But if it's like for a long time, then you're under the perspective of like, think of all the things you can't do because you don't have power. It's no different in the day-to-day life. If we don't have something that we're used to having, it can create a lot of stress. And we're not celebrating the things that we typically know we have. Like, I turn on the tap of water. Do I sit there and go, hooray, it's on? No, but I do feel gratitude for the fact that I have running water whenever I desire to have running water, or that I can have a bath or a shower whenever I want. We don't celebrate those things because we've become used to them. But if they shut off your water, shut off your power, you're like, man, I could really go for one of those things right now.
Exactly. You always have to extra need when you know you can't have it. It's like, but I really needed to have a bath or a shower right now. So it is always funny. I think if I could distill what I just heard you say to bring it back to a practical note for anyone who does watch this on a replay, gratitude for what is in the moment will make a very big shift for your momentum to acknowledge for yourself that where you are now is actually not so bad. So even though you might start off feeling a negative association with, but I don't have those things that I want, or I'm not at the place that I want yet, or I haven't made decisions that I want to make, as opposed to focusing on being in the not having of what you want. Remember, we talked about that 90% of the page, all of those actions and tools and techniques were all still focused on the not having of it. Mm-hmm. If it feels like too much of a stretch to play in that realm of the having of it, the perfect middle ground is gratitude and appreciation for exactly where you are and exactly what you do have. Because what that will do is it helps to overshadow and kind of color in, which colors over the not having it. And it gives you a bridge that can allow the having of it to be brought in even sooner. Because you are not focused on the not having.
Yeah. It's all perspective. It's where you're putting your energy on things. And a lot of us will put our energy in things that we don't have because we forget about the things that we do have. And like I said, anytime my water or my power is shut off, I notice it.
Yeah.
So I get excited about the fact that it's back. But tomorrow I'll go right back to, oh, look, of course the light works.
Yeah.
Which is perfect because that's the having of it, right? Yes. It's like it's knowing, KNOW knowing, that you are, I know, that you that you are, I don't want to say that it's yours, that it's there. It's,
Mhm.
you know, it's a given, you know, with
Yeah.
confidence that you have of turning on a light switch, it's a given. So anyway,
And I agree, be in the knowing of it, because
yeah,
that's practice for yourself what it feels like to be in the having, to be in the knowing, because we do that with water, electricity, internet, air. When we don't have it, it hurts us. But as soon as we have access to it again, we go back to being in the assumption, in the knowing that, of course, we can have it. Of course, it's ours to have. And so when we can practice that and practice what it feels like, we can apply that to these other things as well. The elements of our life that we think we don't have access to.
yeah,
And again, it creates that bridge so that we can have it and have it now. We don't have to wait. The waiting is optional. And the fun part is, of course, for anybody, including me, who thinks, yeah, but I would have it now. If it was my choice, then I would have it now. But it is my choice. So there is an element of me that is saying, not yet, not now. And it's my focus and my thoughts that are creating that. If I truly wanted it now, then I would be in the having of it and it would be mine and it would be done. So
yeah,
it's frustrating, but it's also kind of fun to notice we are always in control.
of our perspective.
We're in control of our perspective, 100%.
Yeah. So I don't know that it would be, that's a whole other topic, but anyway.
Well, there we go. So thank you, Anna, for being here and having wonderful comments. And am I going to show this banner? I'll show it just in case somebody gets to see it. I do have a workshop tomorrow. And although this topic was not because of the workshop, it actually is very in line because it's called Beyond Boundaries. And it is an opportunity, a 90-minute interactive space where we will actually pick something, some kind of stretch goal, some kind of dream, something that we want, and we're going to allow ourselves to play in the having of it and create action steps based on that version of us who knows that it's ours and it can happen right away. So yeah, if you watch this on the replay and you've missed the workshop that was on July 18th, then let me know and maybe the replay is available for a small price. We'll see what happens. So thanks, Danay. It was a great conversation.
Mm-hmm. As usual, people just don't realize that we do this anyways. So it's just, we share with people sometimes.
Yeah, it's lots of fun.
So,
Lots of fun. All right. You are very welcome, Anna. And yeah, we will, I'm sure, come back, another topic, another time. And who knows what it will be.
and who
Could
knows
be
what we're on the cusp of until then.
We could announce all of the new happenings. That'll be fun. Everyone can come and share what's happened.
Yeah. Cool.
All
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye.